Hello and welcome to the 1990 series. My name's Amanda O'Shea from the Serendipity Experience, and I have with me a lovely, lovely friend called Paul Morgan Summers from Wales. Paul, I'm really excited to be catching up with you. Welcome to
Thank
the
you,
top
Amanda.
90. We just had a little chat there, and I was saying I can't remember. It was like about 6 years ago or so, or 6 or 7 years ago. It must have been that
Surely.
I first got to meet you. I think it was one of those Space for Connection. Was it somewhere like that Sue and Sheila?
I believe so.
Like,
yeah, I think so.
They had like a Space for Connection do, or maybe I met you in Spain first, and then I met up with you at one of Sue and Sheila's do's. But it's nice. You always make me laugh, and I never forget that, and I'll never forget you coming into that first. It wasn't the first time I met you, but we were at this do, and I remember the lovely guy Roger and his wife Marion, and you started talking about stuff, and I remember him saying, "Oh, I have to go to the bar. I can see this guy's going to muck my wife's mind up." And she was sat there like listening, as people do when you start talking, and around you, people just like, some people are like, "Oh my goodness, I've never heard this stuff before." But Paul, I love the title that we've given this little chat, which is A Cup of Tea. Because when I always say to you, "What are you up to then, Paul? What are you doing?" You go, "I'm just going around having cups of teas and chats with people." That's what I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. And I would love to know, or just tell us a little bit more about, what are you doing? What are these little cups of teas and chats all about? Because you're all over the place, aren't you? You are a busy boy.
Yeah, life is quite busy. So yeah, just over the years I've chatted to, God knows, hundreds or thousands of people and had thousands of cups of tea, or more lately, cups of coffee, actually.
Oh, you've gone to the coffee.
I've gone to the dark side. the deep roasted side.
Oh, bless you.
Yeah, so I'm more of a coffee person these days than a tea person.
So it's a cup of tea, cup of coffee, and a chat.
Yeah, it's people ask me about what I've always called the ocean, which is a strange conversation. That's why some people just head to the bar.
Yeah.
It either tends to engage the brain, or the brain just runs away from it, because it's a paradoxical chat, really, because it's a bit of a drunken chat, in the sense that it's trying to describe something that can't be described.
Yeah.
And yet, for this character, it's the only thing that's present. That in a sense is such a love affair inside this body for this immaculate ocean. That is everything, including a cup of tea, and that the conversation is literally about the cup of tea or the cup of coffee. That in that very act of drinking a cup of coffee or a cup of tea is an immeasurableness that can't be measured with words, and put into a writing or into a conversation. And yet there's a flavour to that tea conversation or to that coffee conversation that, for some characters, it's like remembering something that has never been forgotten.
Yeah.
And it opens up just a different possibility, that there isn't a distance between a this and a that, between a cup of tea and the person that's drinking a cup of tea, that there's an intimacy in all of life and the whole expression of life, which, although it appears to be full of gaps, as it were, between a this and a that, is intrinsically gapless. But the conversation is really about a sort of gapless love. that has no distance in time and space, which is a cup of tea, a conversation, a chat, a landscape, the sound of birds singing,
I love that.
or indeed toothache.
Yeah, and all of that.
And all of the messiness,
the hug feels better.
Of life. It's an intimacy or a love which removes the appearance of all gaps, really. So, and I can't describe it more than that, because I tried to put my brain to describe it, and as soon as you push the attention or the brain, in a sense, towards the ocean, it just dissolves, and then the words lose any meaning, and they become very drunken into a, because there is no gap, there is nothing to measure. And all these words come out of measurements, really, comparisons between things. Whereas what this character talks about is everything.
I love it, Paul, when you used to talk about like the everything and the nothing, and you used to call it Neverything.
Yeah.
I've used that. I find every time that I talk about the Neverything, I always think of you, because that's where
I know it sounds paradoxical, but it's literally like that. But this immeasurable no thing is simultaneously a cup of tea and everything else, every single name and form. Is me, is you, is us, is them, is old, is young, is birth, is death. It's everything.
Yeah.
With no distance.
It's so lovely.
Yeah, it's just it's
I love that. The gapless love. Is that what you called it?
Yeah.
I like that. I've never heard that before.
It's and in a funny sort of way, it's quite ruthless, because there's no gap. There's no room for a me and a you. That those sort of measurements are, in a sort of way, dissolved. Yeah. Not that they are destroyed or anything. It's just they're simply not needed. They're just noise, as it were. Noise,
the silent singing.
Yeah, silence is the loudest thing ever.
It's funny, isn't it?
And stillness is the fastest thing ever.
Stillness and silence, and they're all words that people just use to describe that feeling of melting back into that sort of an infinite space or something. I mean, you've got a lot of people talking about this, haven't you, Paul, now? A lot of people trying to talk about it.
Well, nobody's ever been able to talk about this. It's almost like falling in love and being slightly drunk, and just the body just drunkenly sings about this love. But it can't be described. It can't be written in a book, and it can't be communicated.
Yet we all experience it, because we are it, I guess, right?
Yes, it's known, but not in a measurement sort of sense. Every character I've met, I laughingly say, it's like these characters fall back into the ocean, and there's no rhyme or reason. It happens probably in a different sort of way for every single character, every single physiology. But there's always noises that come from the body, either laughter, tears, or whatever. Never a sentence, never a logical sentence. And it's just like, I was talking to an old monk recently, and he actually swore quite a bit, but it was just noise. And he said, goodness, it was there like 50 years ago when I walked into the monastery. What I was looking for was the first day I sat and prayed. That was it. Yes, that was the cup of tea. It's always what's been searched for has always been.
There.
And the paradox of the searching is the negation of what already is. Is like in that movement, there's a sort of rejection into a movement into something else, somewhere else. It's the movement of time and space.
It's just, and it's so lovely. I love the way that you talk. I love being in your presence. So just reminding me now, speaking with you again, listening to you.
But the possibility is that you're just, it's so intimate. It's a conversation with oneself.
Yeah.
So there can be words or listening, but there's a gapless hearing, which is wordless.
And it is that, like you say, it's like falling in love with everyone all the time, or falling in love, but there's no falling out of love, is there?
Well, there's no coming and going to this. That's why people use this word unconditional, because it doesn't need a condition, because it's already the case.
I remember, Paul, when on my camper van, I got a sign written, "Fall back in love with life." And the moment that I've put these words on the camper van, I was like, that doesn't make sense. But by then I'd had the sign writing, and I'd had T-shirts printed and new business cards done. And I was like, fall back in love with life. I loved it when I came up, or thought I'd come up with it. And I'd got it sign written. And then I kept looking at it. Fall back in love with life. Fall back in love with life. And I was like, you can never fall out of love with life, but there's no falling in, falling out. But there's this apparent feeling, or that's how I see it or saw it, that you can, that you're in love with life or not. And I remember this guy saying to me one day, how can I fall back in love with life? Because I've never fallen out of love with life. And I was like, isn't that lovely? Isn't that lovely just to see that then? I said, I don't think you need to do one of my programs. I think you're all right.
Yeah. When you scratch away, there's no ignorance in a sense with regard to this. There's just this, I call it the illusion of knowledge. Yeah. It's just we think we know things, or we think we don't know things, or we think we have something or don't have something. So all this noise goes on in very much like a loop within our brains, because that's what knowledge or the brain is designed to do. Really, it's designed to measure. It's because it's designed to survive. Basically, it's designed to replicate. So it's an inappropriate tool in every way possible to see this. It's the one thing that knowledge can't see.
And yet it's like we can't bypass the brain, can we, in our human, it's got so much power in the physical body. I guess it's like, I don't know, it feels like,
well, even that is just the illusion that there is two sides, that there is something beyond knowledge. That thing we call knowledge is ocean, is this. That very movement called knowledge is it.
It's all of it, right? It's all of it, and it isn't all of it, and all of that. It goes on in riddles, doesn't it?
Well, only to the conceptual mind, because the mind is very simplistic. It's very binary. Again, for survival purposes, it didn't have the luxury or the interest into what this is, or if you want to use the word, what the truth is. It just had to move. It had to survive. So all it needed was a model that was good enough to act upon. And then it survived. It had and still has no interest. It's not designed. I often laugh, say it's like a spade. A spade is great knowledge. The brain is great for digging foundations in the earth and building whatever structures you want, for building a house or a boat or a life, as it were. But take that same spade and try to dig a hole into the ocean is slightly problematic and very exhausting. To try to get to the bottom of what's everything, it's an impossibility.
Yeah.
That's why it's never been written in a book or been verbalized into, you know, something which is just born out of time and space. Whereas what's being talked about, although it appears as time and space, is immeasurable, is timeless and spaceless.
It's so lovely. I just, you know, it's really lovely having this conversation with me. It's bringing me back to the times that I sat and listened to you, or had these kind of conversations or these chats. And I remember, I suppose, you know, starting to see this, oh wow, it's like there is there is nothing separate, or, you know, starting to see the oneness, or whatever words it is that we use. But I remember after spending time, I was like, oh, there is no me, right? There's no me. I was like, oh, I tried to cut I and I am out of all my vocabulary. And I remember you said to me, why would you do that? Why would you do that? So, well, there is no me, so I can't, how can I? So I tried to, and it was just like, I was trying too hard to try and, you know, to show that I had an understanding that I didn't exist.
Yeah.
And you were like, that's stupid. Why would you do that?
That's what knowledge does. Knowledge is a very drunken mechanism. But it's a spade. A spade can only be a spade.
Yeah. Yeah. And yet we, and so what is shoveling the spade? What is that? What is the spade in movement? What is the shovel in movement?
That's the movement. That question comes out of the illusion of knowledge, because you don't know what a spade is. You don't know what anything is. You know the comparisons between edges, but the intrinsic isness of whatever, an apple, a spade, an Amanda, a Paul, a son, a mother, time, space, you don't know what any of those measurements are referring to. You know them as a comparison between a this and a that. That's where the knowledge appears from. But the intrinsic isness of what a spade is, you've never met a spade or an apple or a separate something which is Amanda. Knowledge, which is that measurement mechanism, has got one little illusion in it. It's predicted that there's a separate center to these measurements, to these edges. That an apple has a separate center, that Amanda has a separate center called a me. And it's never been experienced, never been met, because there are no separate somethings. It's just the ocean, or God, or whatever word people give to it.
Yeah, the ocean is so beautiful, because I remember wanting to do a retreat with you. We tried for many years, didn't we, to get a retreat together. We were so busy.
And
it just, and it's, yeah, I don't know, busy and what, but it just wasn't, it just never quite, we got there close sometimes. And I wanted to do it by the ocean, because you talk about the ocean so often. There's something lovely, Paul, for me, seeing that that's all okay. Like when, I don't know, like it was a good idea and we run with the idea and then it didn't happen, and then that's okay. You know, there's this okayness. I don't know why my hands are doing this, but it's an okayness. We're going up here and then we're down here.
Because in a sense, no matter what occurs, you know, whether the ocean is like that or like that, or whatever your hands are doing, whatever shape it has, its intrinsic wetness isn't changed.
Yeah. And
if it's in this shape, it isn't more wet than if it's in this shape.
yeah, and
The juice of it is a cup of tea. It's the simplicity of a cup of tea. You can't get more of everything, and you can't get less of everything. You can't have more of no thing or less of no thing.
Yeah.
It's beyond all those sorts of knowledge measurements, because there is no distance for there to be a this and a that.
And it all merges into one, and it was all only one. It was all only ever one anyway, right? It was only ever one.
There's no separate something that has ever been born. Oh!
I love the way, I love that. I love the gapless hug. I love, like, you know, being in this conversation, you know, like I don't know what people who are listening to this recording will either be, like you say, intrigued or think, oh my goodness, he's lost the plot. That I wonder if they're thinking, is he one of the guests at that treatment centre that she
they've probably all gone to the bar.
I might join them. But it is, like, you know, it is so lovely, Paul, when you're traveling around now, because I know that you're in, like, you're going down to, where are you going to next? South England, and then Switzerland?
South England, and then Switzerland, and then just back from Germany and Ireland.
Are people like other people promote you, really? That just happens. I know that they talk about do they promote you as a non-duality speaker, or what do they try and title you? Do they try and give you a...
Well, I don't like, because there is no such thing as non-duality. You know, there isn't a something which is dual or non-dual. So I'm just somebody that chats and drinks coffee. So people put, you know, like we all do, we colour other people with perhaps our own projections or whatever. But it's immaterial, really.
Just the man that chats, the chatty man.
Yeah, drunken man.
That doesn't drink.
Yeah, I've never been able to drink.
Thank God.
Yeah.
Can you imagine?
No, my character's drunk enough, I think.
And it really is that, and it is so, actually, as you're saying that, it really is that, quite funny, because that's how I remember it. You in the conversation, and this guy going, I need to go to the bar. And it really is, like, it's so, the intimacy is just, I think, like, so much for people. They're that. So you've got the, you know, everybody else, it's like, oh my goodness, like, we've just fallen in love, or people leg it, you know, it's like, there's a dance again, a dance.
Very much, because in this embrace, there's no this and that, there's no subject and object, so there's no, the illusion of knowledge that there's a separate something called a me doesn't arise. So for that which thinks it is a something, it often feels threatened by this sort of drunken conversation. So it'll do whatever it has to do to maintain itself. It's designed to survive. Because that mechanism really is the originator of fake news.
It is, and it's uncomfortable for some, you know, it can be very uncomfortable, right? It can
depending on the character, but to feel separate from drinking a cup of tea is not, it's not good enough. There's a dissatisfaction inherent in the appearance of separation.
An appearance. That's it. Clever. So clever.
But it's a real appearance.
Tell me more about that.
I can't.
Just tease me.
The only thing I can, it's like if I say to you, you know, Amanda, I want to give you something. I got this piece of gold, and I'm going to make you this necklace. And I come, oh, look at this, Amanda. And I say to you, Is the necklace separate from the gold, Amanda?
And I say, no, it can't be.
No, we can't, because if it was, I could give you the necklace and keep the gold. There has only ever been gold.
In the shape of a necklace.
So the necklace is almost like a sort, has a flavour of like a borrowed realness.
A borrowed shape.
It borrows its juice from the gold.
Yeah.
But there was never a separate something that was ever a necklace.
But it feels like that, doesn't it? And it looks like that. And
very much so.
People pay lots of money for gold necklaces.
And cups of tea. And the list goes on and on and on.
Paul, it's so lovely to be in the conversation with you again, to be chatting, to be, to just be, I don't know what it is, reminded. I'm so back. The moment you started talking, there's something for me, if I'm in a conversation with myself and that's all that's happening, there's something that sparkly and joyful happens when I hear your voice. So that's good. And if I'm making it up and if it doesn't exist, then it feels like it does, and it's really lovely, and it's a beautiful feeling. And I feel that intimacy. I feel that that it's so jokey for me. It's so childlike, naughty, like this playful, joyful.
There is a very much well, it's just freedom, and in that, you know, there is the flavour of playfulness. There's the flavour of everything. Everything.
It's lovely. You just, it's lovely for me. It's just always so lovely to have another moment of this feeling. It's lovely, and knowing it's all there is, really. I don't know if that's what I do in my work, is try and point people back to the feeling, and then you're okay if it feels different. But I prefer this feeling.
For sure.
Like it.
For my character, there's always I often say that I much prefer less violence to more violence.
Right.
So the more the expression can be intimate, as it were.
Yeah. The lover, not the fighter.
Then that's cool.
Yeah.
And it's just the inherent freedom has that flavor.
Yeah. And it tastes good, right? It just, I love it, because in your conversations, there's there's just whatever, the conversation just happens. There's not you trying to talk people into something, point people to something, no judgment. There's just words popping out of your mouth and expressions, and these beautiful, the way that you express yourself. I think it's really worth people coming and spending time with you if you happen to be in town. Because I remember I've got such lovely memories. I really love it. It's funny. It touches me. It makes me feel happy, and it brings tears to my eyes, and it's all of that at the same time.
Yeah, and it's so free. You can put all the words into a bin.
Yeah. But this character doesn't do very well at that. I try. I try, and then it's like, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to try to not to get in the way of what's playing? Why would I want to try and control something that's just doing its thing?
Because that's what the physiology is designed to do. That's the program of it. There's just, in that movement, there's that illusion of knowledge that there is a center, that there is a separate something called a me that is a mover. What happens when there's just movement but no separate something which is a mover? What's wrong or right about the movement?
Yeah, exactly.
That's the freedom. That's the silence singing.
Yeah.
And the stillness dancing.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. The stillness dancing.
Yeah.
And the mover groover, you know. Just the mover groover. And just playing, and there's that naughtiness feeling. I don't know how other people describe it, but we want to be safe. You know, I see that. I love working with the naughty ones. I love working with the ones, but you still want them to be safe. You know,
For sure.
in the appearance of them being our children, and the appearance of everything. Yeah, it feels like that's the right thing, to still point them in the right direction, whatever we think is the right direction, you know, whatever appears to be nudging the direction in the moment.
For sure.
Yeah. So Paul, what a lovely conversation. Thank you for being part of the 1990 series. I'll just see you when I'm next looking at you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Send you lots of love over there.
And you take care. And I love to everybody when you go to your next event.
Oh, I will do. We're at Viva.
My love.
We're at Viva event. I'll see all the gang, yeah, they all remember you.
Yeah, well, hopefully when I'm away from Wales, I'll see you in Spain, and we'll have a cup of tea.
We'll have a cup of tea, and we'll have a chat, and we'll have a hug, and we'll do all those things, and we'll sit and look at the ocean, and it'll be lovely.
That'll be fun.
Lots of love, Paul.
Okay, take care.
Thank you to everybody who's watched and listened, and I hope you enjoyed it. Bye.